Hello and welcome to another episode of Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. Today I shall be attempting the impossible, the restoration of this No.68b Mercedes coach from 1965. Not much to look at, quite a simple model, but it's the only one I've got and I want it in my collection. So I'm going to give it a go and try and make this look as best I can so that I can put it in my cabinet until something better comes along. There's two variants of this Mercedes coach. Actually, I guess you could say there's more than two. They come in two main colours. You've got the orangey red one that I've got here, and there's also a turquoise blue green coloured one. If you've got the turquoise one, it's worth twice as much as the orange one, but I've got the orange one today. And the other difference is that the seats, the height of the seats can be 7.5 millimeters or 8.5 millimeters high. I don't know which one came first, but I'm guessing it would be the 8.5 millimeter. And then somebody on the production line said, we're using too much plastic. Let's cut the seat size down to 7.5 millimeter and save ourselves £10 a week. Who knows? So this one that I've acquired from a donor, and I have no idea, I don't know why it had no marks on it to identify it to any particular person, but it's pretty much wrecked. The back end is all smashed up on the window frames. So having a look at it here, No.68 Mercedes coach written on the bottom. Interesting configuration of the axles in that the wheels are kind of inboard of the body. The transparency here is pretty bad. Got a lot of cracks in it, a lot of scuffing, a lot of damage. Obviously you can see there's a lot of frame elements missing from the upper deck, the white plastic section. And whoever had it before me or prior to that, some kid has fixed it up and they've glued it together with super glue, like a ton of the stuff. Anyway, here I'm looking at the front. It's got some silver there on the front grille. On the back there is not a lot of detail. A couple of vents there. It must be a rear engine mounted. The engine must be mounted in the rear with this one. It's a Mercedes. There's a Mercedes badge also on the back. If you can see in that hole at the front, there's a little tab that's supposed to be there to hold it together, and it's missing. So I guess that's why it's been glued together. So I'm going through the motions now of pulling it apart, as you would the real thing, or you might actually stick a screwdriver up in the hole underneath and move the plastic tab back. There's no plastic tab here, so I'm just gently pulling it apart and hoping that the super glue that's been there for how many years I don't know will let it release. Very careful. I'm mindful that the windscreen is heavily cracked, and if I put too much force on it, it could just snap into two pieces. So I'm just having a look here to see what's preventing me from pulling this out. There's just a lot of glue in there. And it's hard. It's hard glue, like super glue that's gone hard. So I've gone as far as I'm prepared to go, and I resort to using a fine blade modelling knife here to try and cut away the glue between the base and the windscreen. Finally get it out, and I can see that the windscreen is also attached to the seats with the super glue. So this is worse than I thought. I'm going to have to try and separate the base from the windscreen and possibly the frame from the windscreen, but I can't see that happening. I'm lucky enough to get a bit of leverage in between the seating area, the floor of the bus, and the windows and the window frames. Once again using a hobby knife just to cut away any areas where I can see it's being held in place. I fear I may have bitten off more than I can chew with this model, and I'm of the opinion that at the end of the day it's not going to look anywhere near brand new. However, I do like a challenge, and I've been looking at it for a while, and I don't have it in my cabinet. It's one that I'd like, so I'm going to try and do as best I can with what I've got, and until another windscreen turns up, or I find one of a treasure stall somewhere, I'll just have to make do with what I've got for now. A lot of effort and time involved in pulling this apart. Hey. Eventually I get the seats and the floor pan off from the window in the frame, and I'm looking at the window in the frame and I'm thinking there is no way known I'm going to get that frame off, because it is glued all the way along. Almost every element of the horizontal section there is glued to the transparency. So using this craft knife, I start picking off some super glue. I do a little bit of research online, and they say that I was looking how to dissolve super glue, and there was two answers: acetone and WD-40. So I thought, well, this could be the answer. Maybe if I put enough of this product on the car, I can sort of separate the windscreen from the frame. So first up, I've got this scrap windscreen assembly from a car. I don't know which car it's from, but it's scrapped because it's all cracked and everything. And I'm going to attempt to remove super glue. I put super glue on the front windscreen and on the back windscreen, and I'm going to attempt to remove it using the acetone and the WD-40 as a test before I hit the main model. The results of my attempts to remove the super glue are that WD-40 and acetone do not do anything to remove super glue. So I have to resort to the knife blade, and I've come around to the way of thinking that the frame is not going to be removed from the clear transparency, so I'm just going to have to work with what I've got and try and make it look as good as I can. There's a big crack in the windscreen on the transparency there, so I'm going to stop drill it. Now, what is stop drilling, I hear you say? Well, stop drilling is when a crack, you see a crack in a piece of material, like a metal on an aircraft, for example, or plastic on a Matchbox car. What you do is you drill a very small hole at the end of the crack, and with the intention that the crack will migrate into the hole and then have nowhere to go. So that's what I'm doing here, and that's what I've done. That way, when I'm handling this model, I'm going to be putting a lot of pressure on it, gouging off all the super glue in that. The crack hopefully won't get any worse. I've temporarily reinstalled the windscreens and frames into the body of the bus, the coach, so that it's easier for me to hold and work on it. It also gives a little bit of support to the transparency to prevent the cracks from getting any worse. So I'm using a little bit of the WD-40 there to try and loosen up the super glue that's squeezed out between the frame and the windscreen, and it's having minimal effect really. I'm just doing it in the hope that it's doing something, but it doesn't seem to be doing anything. I've come to the decision that I'm going to have to scratch the super glue off and then try and polish the scratches out. And I've actually ordered some Polywatch, I think it's called, probably the best plastic polish you can buy, rumoured to be by people that have commented on some of my previous makeovers, and I thought I'd give it a go, but I don't think it's going to come in time for this particular makeover. It was a bit of a shame because it's a good candidate for it. So I'm going very, very carefully, trying not to damage the windscreen and merely trying to pluck off as much super glue as I can. if there's a little scratch on there, I get some 2000 grit emery paper, wet and dry emery paper, and try and polish it out. Now, after a few hours, this is what my workbench looks like. It's a mess. I've tried every trick in the book here to try and get this windscreen looking half decent. And again, I'm thinking it's never going to look new again. So in my mind, I'm thinking I shall source one in the future, but I shall carry on because this is quite an interesting project and challenging, and I like to take up a challenge. So I got some of this polystyrene rods. I was hoping they'd be flat sections, but they're actually tubular or cylindrical, got a cylindrical cross section. And I want them to be flat on one side and cylindrical on the other, so they sit better on the windscreen. So I put them in my cooker there in the hope that the heat and gravity will cause them to flatten out over time. I've just put them in there for a couple of minutes. And I'm just showing you here, it's quite a good size, so they're almost the right thickness, except they just need to be reduced in one plane, the X or the Y, I'm not too sure what you'd call it, but I need them to be halved. If I could cut them in half lengthways, that would be good. Anyway, I go back to my oven, and unfortunately they haven't sunk down and flattened out on one side. Instead, it's gone hard and curved and shortened and actually slightly increased in its diameter. So heating it up did not do the job. So I'm thinking, well, I can't use the cylindrical sprue or plastic, whatever you call it. So I'm going to have to somehow sand it down, I guess, to make one side flat. So I've got some moderately coarse sandpaper here. I'm going to tape it to the bench so I can use it to drag the strands of the polystyrene plastic through, like this, holding it down with my finger and pulling it through. Luckily this one's bent because I was doing a test on how easily it bent. So I'm using it as a guide by having it pointing down continuously and pulling with consistent pressure from my finger there. You can see on the sandpaper there is some material being worn away, but it's not enough, and looking at it, it's hardly touched it. So I figure maybe a little bit more pressure, and I changed the grit of the sandpaper to a little bit coarser. Now this is starting to have some effect. There you can see it's no longer circular, the cross section, it's actually flat on the bottom and curved on the top. It's a semicircle. I thought of that word at the time, and I haven't used that word since I was at school, I think, in mathematics. Has anybody else used the word semicircle recently? It's interesting, isn't it? It's a word I nearly forgot. Still, look at that. That looks great. So I'm going to be using this Tamiya extra thin cement because it's the only plastic cement I've got, but I think it should do a good job. And to test out my theory, I've glued it on a piece of this shattered transparency from an old truck I had. I don't know why I kept it, but I had it in a box. And I've glued those pieces on there to see what they look like, and they look great. So I think, and also I noticed that glue did not make the transparency go cloudy, which is a good thing. So back to the knife, a little bit more preparation. Just looking at the points where I've got to attach this plastic to, and I'm trimming them down to make it a nice clean fit. Now this piece of frame here, I've marked it with a little red texter. Somehow I've got to bend that around the corner there because that piece at the top was all one piece. So I don't want to try and make a miter joint on the corner of the windscreen. I think that would be extremely difficult to do. So I'm using a soldering iron here just to gently warm the plastic up in the hope that I can bend it in a sort of a sweet looking curve. Not like a right angle, but sort of a natural curve of a frame that would go around the windscreen there. And I'm just holding it into position and hoping it cools quickly. I'm blowing on it and trying to cool it down, and then I move on to the next corner. And I'm getting a little bit excited here because I'm thinking this might actually work. And I've kind of, the restoration's gone out of my mind now. My sole focus is in trying to recreate the frame for this windscreen. That's my only goal at the moment. If I can do that, then I will be pleased. So I've done that horizontal section. It looks a little bit wonky on the front there. I'm going to have to prop it up with a slightly longer corner piece, I think. But overall, first impressions are, I'm hopeful. Now, I couldn't believe how small the the vertical supports had to be. They don't look this small when you look at the model, but they're absolutely tiny. The only way I could pick them up is with these tweezers and then place them into position very delicately. And I must admit, this is not the first time I've done this. I did it multiple times. Slightly sanding the ends down each time to make it fit. So I keep going, little bit by little bit. I've got a sore neck, I've got a sore back, I'm leaning over, my eyes are hurting and watering. But I keep going for like hours. Just to say I've done it and say it could be done. Because all the while I've been saying it can't be done. But I'm looking at it and thinking, you know what, maybe I can make something out of this. I'm having fun anyway. It's experimenting with new techniques and new products. I'm not 100% happy with the joins. There are slight gaps between the elements that I've made. So I'm just using a very tiny amount of Tamiya putty to fill in those gaps, and I'm going to paint the whole thing with the Tamiya white, gloss white. I'm going to paint the thin bars with a paintbrush, but the top, I don't want brush strokes in it, so I thought I'd spray the top and then just paint the rest of it by hand, and hopefully it won't look too bad. So time to fire up the spray booth. Got the extraction fan on, some illumination. Oh, the telly's on in the background there. Get that out of the way. Look at me. I look like a broken man. I've taken on more than I can handle. Let's see how this goes. Tamiya white paint is doing as what it normally does. It's going on quite well. I put on a medium heavy coat so that it will level out and look like plastic again, hopefully. Wow. I can't wait to unwrap this. I'm like a kid at Christmas. I know I shouldn't, but I'm going a little bit ahead of time here. The paint's still tacky, but I just want to see what it looks like. Hey, I'm pleased. I've got no overspray on the plastic, the clear plastic, and things are looking up. Could almost say I'm happy with that. I take the wheels off in readiness to strip this the base and paint it. And like I say, this is an unusual sort of thing where you can't just take the wheels off, you have to take the axle out so that the wheels fall off, because the wheels are held in place by a sort of undersized wheel arch, which I don't think I've ever seen before. So to try and replicate the orange, I'm going to use orange and a drop of red, because it's a bit of a reddy orange. And I'm using the Mr. Hobby paints first time up here. So I'm in a bit of a rush. I've wasted so much time making that frame. I've got to forge ahead. So I'm not dilly-dallying. I'm using heaps of paint stripper to get the job done as quickly as possible. I'm basically saturating the model with this stuff. As always, the paint just falls off within a matter of minutes. So the large bits come off pretty quick, then there's all the little bits that cling on there. I take it into the laundry sink, give it a scrub there with the old toothbrush. There's 99.9% of the orange gone. Just a little bit on the inside, which I hit with the dental tools I've got. Just gouge that out. Takes about a minute. Dry it off. And gonna give it an undercoat of the Tamiya Fine Grey. I've noticed I always do two sweeps, like starting off target, press down, move across off target, and then off target, press, move back off target. And I do that as a habit, out of habit now. So two sweeps, and then I rotate it and go again. And I have fairly consistent results, good coverage, even coverage too. Some great detail on the front there. Look, a number plate, Mercedes badge, grille and headlights. Some luggage lockers on the bottom there. Well, it is a bus. And on the back, I guess it's a rear mounted engine because there's vents there. A couple of lights and handles maybe to open up that hatch to check the oil. Very clean casting, no flashing on it, or you know, some of them look atrocious, but this one looks really clean. So here I go with the orange, and straight off the bat I'm thinking something's not right. Seems like my airbrush is sort of underpowered, but I haven't made any adjustments or anything. But could be I'm using a different paint. I'm using the Mr. Hobby, and I don't usually use Mr. Hobby. So I spray it, and I'm looking at it. Well, I mean, that looks good, but I think that's the second time I did it. The first time it didn't work out. Second time I used Tamiya paint, and I wasted a lot of paint on this model. Yeah, so I used the Tamiya paint to get the final result. So I've just got, where I masked it off, I've got to paint that masking line, try and blend it in. Then I painstakingly go over all of the frame elements, and the difficult bit was getting the edges of the frame without getting it onto the perspex. And as hard as I tried, and I tried, and I tried, couldn't get it looking as good as I wanted. But that happens sometimes. So I put the wheels back on, and the tyres, I didn't have to do anything to them. They were in such good condition. The interior seats I did clean up and spray with some white matte paint from a pressure pack, and I gave it a little bit of a spruce up with the Tamiya clear coat. Not that you're going to be able to see it because the windows are quite misty until I get around to fixing that. Just looking at this now, how many would this be? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. No, I think I counted. Let me count it again. I think there's 20 seats in there. And one of them's the driver's. Oh, let me count it again. Yep, 20. I think it seats 20. Interestingly, though, the driver's door is on the left-hand side, which means, considering this was made in England for English people to buy, seems a bit odd. Unless these particular buses only came out left-hand drive. By putting the transparency in the framework back on, I found a problem. I noticed there is a plastic retaining tab from the front that's missing, that normally clicks in when you push down on the front of the roof. It's not there, and I can't see any way of fixing it other than all that glue I took off and putting some more glue on. Just a tiny little bit on there of the Araldite Rapid. That's the plan, because there's a little tab on the front of the windscreen. There's two on the back that engage, and then you swing the windscreen down and press the front in. Normally it would click in place, but today it's being glued in with a tiny lump of Araldite, and then just to top things off, I'm putting a little bit down in that hole to maybe make like a Araldite sort of rivet, but it won't be round, it'll be like rectangular. And I've had to put that hammer on there to keep the gap closed whilst it sets, because there's a little bit of spring action there where the top was trying to pull up and off of the metal bit, the orange bit around the bottom. So nothing was simple. I'm painting the bumper bar and grille with some chrome paint. I was tempted to do the number plate, but I didn't feel it was appropriate. So instead I did the rear bumper bar as well. In hindsight, I look at this now and I can see that the number plate was in fact silver. Anyway, this is what it looks like now, and okay, it's not perfect, but let me let you into a secret. None of them are. Although we like to think so. However, when this little model will be in my cabinet and on the shelf, it'll fill a hole, a gap in my collection that I haven't filled, and I can always revisit it in the future if I manage to source a new windscreen and frames for the top there. So in the meantime, I'm quite pleased with how it turned out, considering what I started with. Maybe not worth the hours spent, but it was fun and challenging, and I feel like I have got an acceptable result, knowing firsthand right off the bat at the beginning that it wasn't going to be perfect. So I'm quite pleased overall. It was fun to do, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please like and subscribe and recommend to your friends. And I'm going to now go and put this in my cabinet along with all my other makeovers, and hopefully I shall revisit again sometime this year and spruce it up again. That will probably be a little short video that I'll put out as a kind of catch up. So there you go. Once again, thanks for watching, and until next time, this is Marty saying goodbye.